Go. Hi, everybody. It's Nancy Reyes with For Your Canine.
And Joanne Soike with For Better For Worse.
Hello. I hope you are all well. Today, our topic, let us know you're there. Today, our topic is going to be about dogs and emotions. And this topic came to me, actually, sadly, a few days ago, having a conversation with somebody about dog training and all that. And it was so interesting that there's still a school, hi Sue, still a school of thought that animals don't really have feelings or emotions and all that. So it's really very, very, hi Ronnie, very interesting that was a conversation that was had. So I thought that would be a great, hey Jane, that would be a great Facebook Live topic, because maybe in this day and age, I'm assuming that people know that dogs have emotions, but maybe not, right? So, so I wanted to talk a little bit about little science about it, and just kind of just some of the things that maybe look like one thing that aren't, and what the range of our dog's emotions are and things like that. So anyway, so that's why I wanted to talk about this topic, because it was just an interesting conversation we had. So I'm going to be honest, when I started dog training or learning about operant training many years ago, when it first came on the scene, the thought was that dogs don't really have feelings, they don't have emotions, they just are. You can just train them like you would a lab rat or a marine mammal or anything like that. It was just, you put in what you get in and you put it out, and that's what happened. So, but it always bothered me. Yeah, yeah, no kidding, Sue. Um, and it always bothered me because it's like, that didn't sound right to me. It just didn't. And training was challenging because of that. I felt like I was inadequate. I didn't know what I was doing because I wasn't getting certain results, and it wasn't matching up what the thought process should have been to that. So anyway, the more I learned about it, and then and now it's a little different. So we wanted to talk a little bit about how we know dogs have emotions, how what are some of the studies that have been done to show us that. And yes, a lot of our dogs have lots of emotions. My Tango was just having a whole bunch of them a little while ago. So, so, so it was a perfect. He knew what the topic was. I guess.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that always, I don't want to say bothered me, but I don't know another word to use, because it did bother me. The basis of science, especially older science, right, before we had all the new technologies, was if you can't study it and measure it and put it on paper, wasn't science, right? There wasn't proof in that. And when you talk emotions, how do you measure love? How do you measure fear? How do you measure those types of things other than chemicals, certain reactions that happen? We know goosebumps happen when you get cold, or, if something happens in your body that they pop out. That's a physiological response that can be measured. Saying that, I love you, what does that mean to you? What does it mean scientifically? It's really, really hard to study. And many years ago, right, they didn't have any of the technological tools like we have today. So I think we're going to be talking about some of these studies that use some of the new technology to actually now prove this in science.
Right. So the history of dog emotions was basically via the church, all the different sciences that were being, or science studies that were being done through the church. So acknowledging that animals might have emotions would be, it would then get into a very difficult topic about souls and all those kind of religious intonations that would have to do with dogs. So there was two scientists, cause this, I'm gonna butcher the name, Descartes and Mel something. Oh my gosh, Descartes and what is the guy's name? And Mellon Branch, who basically said that animals, dogs, are just machines. You just put the information and you get out what you put in, and that's it. But this is back in the time when the church again governed the sciences, right? So they had to be very careful how they how they studied it and what their findings were. So it wasn't until but that was always out there, right? Like the dogs are just machines you put information in, and that they don't have feelings, they don't feel pain, they don't feel fear, they don't feel all those things. And those of us that have dogs know that that's absolutely not true at all, right? So, but it's hard to measure it. So finally, there's been a couple of groups, and in the recent couple decades, or few decades, that now they're able to kind of show us that animals do have emotions. So the one that comes to my mind, and then Joanne has another, is Jacques Pansep. He is an Estonian scientist. He died in actually 2016, and he did a lot of studies on the brain and on rats. And so he basically came up with that since dogs are so physiologically similar to us, there is a range of emotions that they do have, and he did a lot of studies, and the dogs have dopamine and all those, the same things that we do. So why wouldn't they be able to feel the same ranges of emotions that we do? But they don't feel all the ranges of emotion, and we'll talk about that a bit later. And then Joanne found there's a study that they did, and actually some of you might have already seen it on TV because I think they did a special on it. Go ahead, Joanne.
Yeah, he's done a lot of TED Talks. His name is Gregory Burns. And if you guys have ever heard of the MRI studies where they train the dogs to go into the MRI, put their chins on a chin rest, and lay perfectly still so that they could measure unrestrained brain activity in the dogs. And so what they found was there is a portion of the brain called the caudate nucleus, and that particular portion of the brain is basically the reward center. It has the most dopamine receptors of anywhere in the brain. And so this study was amazing because what they started with, it's still going on today, by the way. So they're in the 8th year, I think, of studying some of this stuff. And so he's taking new people all the time. But one of the first ones that they did was olfactory scent and how it impacted the reward center of the brain. So they did a familiar human, and that familiar human was not their handler. Okay, it was not the person that fed the dog or trained the dog or did all that stuff. It was either someone else that lived in the house, a child, a husband. He was saying, assuming most of the handlers were female, which they were, so not giving any gender bias there. But someone else in the home, or if you were single, a very close person that the dog knew very well. And they also then did an unfamiliar human, someone the dog didn't know. They did a familiar dog, usually another dog in the home or one that they played with frequently, or an unfamiliar dog, one they had never smelled before. What they found was the olfactory portions of the brain lit up the same way. So the dog was smelling everything and taking it all in. But the one that lit up the caudate nucleus was the familiar human. So one thing that Gregory Burns had said was, do dogs miss us? He said, I have to say that they do, because it wasn't about the person with the hot dog. It was the olfactory scent of someone who wasn't even there. And, the dog showed a positive response of dopamine in that caudate nucleus.
So, so dogs do. So there's no question that dogs have emotions. The big question is how much they have. What is the range they have? So there's been a couple of studies that show that. I will share the screen. Uh, hold on one second. And hold on, let me adjust. Sorry, guys, for the eyes, for the eyeballs. All right, and I will go here. So I can't see what you're seeing, Joanne. So dogs. Do you see that?
Yep.
Okay, dogs develop a lot. A lot, but they're a human. The emotions stop at about 2.5. So they're able to do. They feel excitement, distress, contentment, disgust, fear, anger, joy, shyness, affection, and love. What they don't develop is shame, pride, and guilt, which unfortunately a lot of people assume that they feel these things, right? Dogs don't feel. If you put a if you put a if you put a a holiday costume on the dog, he doesn't feel shame on that. he he doesn't feel shame. It's all good. Just put him on. And the reason, so one of the reasons that we want to clarify is they are able to feel all those things. But what happens is a lot of people say, "Oh, my dog is guilty." And as a dog, those of us that are dog trainers, we hear it all the time. He knows he did something wrong. I came home. He had peed on the floor. He knew he did that. He knew I did that. He did that. That he knocked over the garbage can, or he had an accident in the house. And I think what we pick up or what we see or think that is shame or guilt is really they already are reading our body language, because man, they're more in tune than we are, and they've seen it before, right? You've been upset. They went potty in the house. The scenario has already played out. They already know what's coming, so that's what looks like guilt. But they don't feel guilty. Like, I'm sorry I did that. The other thing is, which is really great, which is really interesting, is contempt. Like dogs, and this you hear a lot at the dog shows, that the dogs are out to get me. How dare you embarrass me this way? Dogs don't have that capacity, thank God, because some of us would have a pillow over our heads at times. So
you're not leaving the house. You have to stay home.
So fortunately, we know that they don't feel that range, right? That range of emotion, because if you think about it, in a child, a 2.5-year-old child, in that mentality, the children don't understand shame. They trust me have you ever been around a 2.5-year-old? They don't have that. And guilt or anything like that. It's not until later that they develop those things as they're exposed more to it and things like that. So yes, so Karen, that's right. It's basically about, they know the last time you were in that mode, stressed or whatever, or you came home and you saw pee, the last time that happened, nothing good happened. So here we go. It might happen again, right?
Yeah, and I mean, the last dog I adopted, my border collie. I'll tell you, I just adopted a puppy out who was struggling with some house training issues. And I felt so bad for her, because every time I corrected him, right, right, she was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "You didn't do anything. It's okay." Right. But just, even if I wasn't looking at her, just the noise, just that body change in me, she was devastated. And I'm like, "It wasn't you." So, it really truly is them reading off of us. And the more sensitive dogs are the ones that you'll see do that a lot more. Now the puppy could have cared less that I corrected him, unfortunately. But
he's like, I don't know what your problem is, but okay.
I had to go. I don't know. So yeah.
So it's one of those things. So those are, so sometimes the easy answer, the easy answer is the simplest answer. Like the dogs are not plotting. Because could you imagine, really truly, could you imagine those of you who do agility, those of you who are that you're out on the thing and the dog has contempt or they're going to get you back? Oh my God, could you imagine some of the things those dogs would do?
There'd be a lot of injured people out on the agility course, I think.
I think so too. I think the sport would have died a long time ago. We would have been
the sport. I think the people running might have died a long time ago.
Exactly, which would have killed the sport. But those,
how can I slam her head into that A-frame? We'll just see if I can.
So it would be, so it's interesting. So but a lot of people, I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that, right? At a trial. How dare you do this to me? Lots of pooping in the ring. That's right, Tony. A lot of it. But luckily, fortunately for us, our dogs, they don't get to that range, right? And of course, depending on the maturity of your dog and all that kind of stuff, it really depends on how quickly they mature, how and their breed and all those kind of things, right? But you notice, just like people, some dogs have a lot more of emotions than others. Vishlas for
Vishlas.
Those are the most emotional dogs ever. They're like, so yeah, they're very, but yeah, and the dogs use it to communicate, right? Like, this is what's going on. So when you're having a behavior issue with your dog, like for example, the separation anxiety, it really speaks to the, seeking part of the brain. They want to be with you and all those. What are you talking about? Yeah, Melanie, especially your Vishlas. But they really are, when the separation, they miss you. They need that, and it's a little bit of a, to be honest, it's like a little bit of a resource, right? They want you there. They want you, like, for example, jealousy. Like when a dog exhibits some jealousy, it's not really jealousy. Dogs don't feel jealousy. It's more of a resource, right? You're the resource. So if there's another dog by you, the other dog wants the resource, which is you. It doesn't mean they're resource guarders. It's just that's how they handle resources. And some dogs don't care, and some dogs really do care. So dogs don't feel jealousy. Like, I think there's a certain, and I don't know if Joanne will agree, a little bit of competitiveness, which is still kind of a resourcey thing when you have more than one dog and you run one and the other one, and they just want to go. They're not jealous of the other one. They just want that attention or that resource, which is you, or that activity. So
yeah, it was so apparent to me when I started rebuilding and had a single dog, and I would put his food down and he's like, I don't want that. I was like, okay, you don't have to have it. So he would miss some meals. As soon as I got a second dog, he's like, I want that. And he would eat the whole bowl super fast because, right, it's that a little bit of the competitiveness of the resource. I didn't really want it myself, but I don't want you to have it. So I'm going to eat it.
Yeah. But so that's why dogs don't really feel, they're not really jealous. It's just a resource thing. Again, doesn't mean they're resource guarding, but you're the resource. So like when you have multiple dogs, and if you really notice, those of you with multiple dogs, some are more guarded than others. For example, which kind of goes along with their personality. My lab, if I'm giving anything or anyone else attention, the cats, the other dogs, she's right there, wants to have in on it, right? And my shepherd male, Tango, is like that. My female shepherd is like, she loves me, so I don't have to do that. She's a little more secure. She's not as, for her, that's not a thing, right? But for the lab, it's a big thing. I am a big resource for her, and she's all about it. So it's very interesting. And she also is not so crazy when I leave her at home without the other dogs. I mean, she's okay, but she doesn't love it. So it's an interesting little side on that. Is that Bammers?
Yes.
Because yes, it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, so those are things that and dogs do feel disgust. I think Alicia, yeah, dogs will show disgust. Like if you don't have a dog that doesn't want to, that's like if another dog went in the house, they're like, oh my god, ew. That's just, you know what I mean. They can easily show that their displeasure. So Alicia, this is really good. Nazar, after Nuka's gone, he doesn't want to be the first to the bowl, first outside. No more rushing from him. He stopped. He doesn't even care about food. Interesting. Yeah, there's no competition for it. It's all his all the time.
It's funny, right? How things can change just with that little bit of competition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, it's a resource thing. Like I said, not that they're resource guarding, but it is a resource. So that's what we wanted. The other thing I wanted to actually touch upon was that I wanted you to kind of, yeah, and it is about what we want to see, what how much emotions they have, right? And to what degree. So it's really something to be really thoughtful about, and so that you're not putting, some of us have a tendency to put a lot of the human characteristics on the dog, and so we make not so great decisions based on that. Oh, he's trying to get back at me. He hates me. He doesn't like so and so or whatever. He might not be fond of a person or whatever, but always look for an easier answer, right? Because what sometimes it's just that person maybe stares at him too much or whatever it is. So it's a really important thing not to put so many human characteristics on the dog. However, they do experience love the way we do. They miss us when we're gone. They do feel fear. They do feel pain. All those things that we need to think about. And one of the things about it is sometimes, and some people don't want to think about it because they might feel bad about how they treat their dogs, right? Because it's easy to treat something that you don't think has real feelings like a certain way versus somebody that you know like like another person, right? You would never. Sometimes if you think about how we treat our dogs, in some cases, not all, and being angry or whatever, that you would probably not treat a person that way. But it's easy to do it to the dog when you think, oh well, they'll just get over it. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't, just like people, right?
Well, and I think that's a really good point of discussion because it's easier to just pull on the leash and say, come on, let's go, right? It takes time, and a person is going to talk back to you and say, hey, stop, like I need a minute, or don't do that to me. A dog is attached to a leash most of the time, right? And they're forced sometimes. Like we don't want to think about the fact that we're not as patient as we can be. We're not as thoughtful as we can be to another living being with feelings and emotions, right? And we're all guilty of it. Nancy and I as well, right? It's sometimes you're like, just get in the car, or whatever it is.
Yes.
And it's, I get it, but the one that really just drives a stake in my heart is the fear emotion, right? I mean, how many times have you seen people, oh, just come on, get over yourself, right? You'll be fine. Or it's the dog's clearly putting on the brakes. He's fearful, and we see a leash. You just drag them over to the super scary thing, right? Could you imagine? And I'm going to use Melanie because she just judged for me at my house, right? I have a snake. It's a small snake, and Melanie is pretty deathly afraid of that. And so, you know, we kind of talked about it before she came. She's like, as long as I don't see it, it'll be fine. And you know,
she was
if
like,
I
hey, what's that? No.
yeah. But you know, could you imagine if I took her car keys, unlocked the doors, and said, "All right, you're dealing with this," right? She might not have come out of the house. She'd have to check herself into the hospital, right? But because she's been here a couple of times on her own terms, she told me today after she left, she said, I was leaving this morning and she poked her head out and I saw her. And I said, "Isn't she cute?" And she said, "Okay, but little baby steps,"
He
right?
goes, okay.
But right, so I know there's probably people who are fearful of snakes on here, right? I think she's adorable. She's very sweet. She's actually very lovable. She curls up and loves to hang out and just kind of, I don't want to use the word snuggle with a snake, but she does. She likes to curl up and kind of hang out. And you know, I was very hopeful when I had her, she would be an advocate for people who were fearful. And you know, somebody like Melanie, you're right, baby steps, but she's like, I'm not ready yet. A dog, and you have to respect that in a human. But if a dog puts on the brakes or a dog tries to go the other direction and they're attached to a leash, what do we do? Well, it depends on what you need to do at that moment, right? We very, very rarely will take 10 minutes, you know, to stop and help our dog get over the scary statue or whatever it is, right? It's so sad because you do that for your friend, but our dogs give us so much. A lot of times we don't take the time to help them through something.
Right. And so that's
Love me.
yeah, especially well, and especially with some of the harsher training methods. It's
Right.
easy to say, well, they don't really, it doesn't hurt that much. Well, to you, but it might, and everybody has different pain thresholds, right? So do dogs. So it may not hurt my dog so much, but it might hurt the hell out of yours. And from a training perspective and a dog competition perspective, what is the price you're willing to pay for that ribbon, right? And I have seen over the years atrocities done to dogs in the name of getting a ribbon.
Yep.
And that just, I can't get on board with that. If you have to do something harsher maybe to save their life, okay. Like if you, speaking of snakes, like snake training, right? For those people that live in snake areas, in areas where there's a lot of snakes. Yeah, you want to, you know, that has to be trained in such a way that that dog's not even going to try to go near that snake, because that can end the dog's life. So yes, that's a life and death situation that you have to do what needs to happen to, so the dog really understands, don't go near that ever, right? But because you want your ribbon, you know. And so Melanie just bought some, she says, don't flood her. So going back to Melanie, we'll use Melanie as an example. A lot of us tend to, without even knowing what you're doing, is using flooding for training. Sometimes we do it thinking, oh, they'll just get used to it. Just keep exposing them to it. Just keep exposing them to it. They'll get used to it. They will and they won't, right? Some dogs might, but other dogs don't. And if you're still seeing that behavior a little bit later, it's still not gone. Flooding can go bad. I've seen it go bad. I've had dog behavior clients that they use flooding, you know, with the dogs, and you see it a lot with dog-to-dog aggression or reactivity, where they put the dog in the middle of a room with a bunch of other dogs around it and having them walk around it, and then not allowing the dog to react. That, think about Melanie, if we put her in a room, had snakes going all around her,
she's gonna have nightmares.
and she couldn't do anything.
Right.
To get away. She couldn't do anything to move from there. Just think about that. And how would she come out of that space? And where she had a couple of snakes giving her the evil eye and looking at her and going, what do you know?
Right. And on top of that, even with that, let's even put another training perspective on it, right? Every time she flinched, I smacked her, right? Because that's a thing. We call her correct dogs all the time. Stop that, right?
Yes.
So that now you're not only fearful, you not only can't get out of that fear, but then you're not even allowed to react to fear without an aversive to yourself. How horrible.
Right. So, and Katie brings up a wonderful little uh, systematic desensitization is more humane. Not always. Not
Depends on how
always.
you do it.
Right. Not always. Spreading the exposure over time. Not always. Some dogs, sweet dreams tonight, Mel. No, not always. So really good. So Katie says instead of flooding, which is just, all about, is systematic desensitization. I have seen dogs that the big problem with that is that most people start where the dog's already scared.
Mm-hmm.
They start still still too difficult for the dog. And that's where that goes wrong. So they start where the dog is having some issue. Let's say the dog is afraid of, I don't know, let me think of something. Judy, yes, flooding is very, people do it all the time.
Yep.
More than you can probably imagine. So let's say, for example, if the dog is deathly afraid of a statue, let me give you an example. A statue, a lot of people, what they do instead of they'll take it where the dog is not going up on its own. You're taking it there. So they're not choosing to go there. The dog, if you're going to use desensitization, no English so good today. If you're going to use that methodology, the dog should have the freedom to move away from it very easily. The dog needs to have the autonomy to be able to go like, yeah, I'm going to get away from that. So we use that for, let's say, treat retreat. Like the dog gets to choose how close he gets to the person. The person is just there on a long line. The dog gets to pick how close. And I think that's where some of that work doesn't go well, right? Because the dog is still starting in a place of stress. The dog should be able to have that freedom to go back and forth and deal with it as they need to, right? And those well-meaning people doing that sometimes are starting where the dog is still over threshold and can't handle it.
Yeah, and I'm going to call them super well-meaning people that are trying to do good. You're not meaning to do anything bad to the dog. When you introduce food to that scenario, can be just as hard for the dog. Maybe you start farther away and you're luring and you're luring and you're luring, and the dog loves food to overcome that fear. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Okay. So be careful in your use of food and luring. So, like I know when Nancy and I are going to use something food, we toss it. It's the dog's choice of whether or not they want to go up and get it. And if you start seeing all the compression, the dog starts slinking down or plants its back feet, and they stretch way out to try and get that food. It's too much for the dog, right? So you don't want to throw the food that close, okay? Because now they're in huge conflict with themselves about, I really want that cookie, but I so don't want to go buy that thing, right? And again, kind of like flooding, that can work sometimes to make them go a little farther, but it can also be really detrimental to their confidence.
Right. And Chelsea, you said that she's not good with construction or won't go forward. So the thing is, Chelsea, so one of the things you can do to work on that, if you have a construction zone, go where she's comfortable, and then go the other way. So she has the autonomy. You are able to move her away from it, and then the next time go and see if you can get a little closer. And when she decides she's done, then walk away, go another way. And over time, that really works really well, where the dog is, Like, okay, it's not so bad. And especially when they have the freedom to get away from it. Because I think that's where we fall down on that, right? If the dog can't get away and the dog doesn't have the freedom to get away and we don't honor it and we make them do it, it never gets better, right? It's just doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And Katie, you're right, because I think with Jamie's training, right, there's been a lot of food to get her to approach, right? So what she's talking about is today, she was waiting to go, and I sort of said, "Hey, Jamie, how's it going?" And I just reached my hand out, and she walked up to my hand and realized I didn't have food and kind of went, "Ugh." Like it wasn't even a aggressive growl, but she was absolutely telling me, like, why would you even ask me to come over if you don't have a cookie for me? So, right, she had no interest in interacting with me. She just wanted the reward.
Right. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. So Chris says if you touch something uh, enough, you come and check it out. Right. But it's still her choice. Exactly right. So
Yep.
if you go over to that statue and go, hey, come and check, and they're like, okay. And then they're like, okay, as long as you're there, I can do it. Okay, great. If not, don't force it. And this especially is true of dogs that are afraid of people. We are really bad about that. We force them to visit people when they don't want to. We don't give the dogs the opportunity to make that choice. Because let's say somebody said to you, you have to be friends with her and you have to like her right now. You're going to be like, well, I got to get to know her better. I need time, right? And we want our dogs to just like people because it's embarrassing. Charlotte won't near a big Kate with one fella her just put fruit near she won't have any part of it. Yep. So yeah, Tony. But that's not such a bad accident. Just saying. No, I'm kidding. Because sometimes if they don't go near a gate, they'll respect the boundaries. But so Tony, see if you can put it a little further away from the baby gate. Put it where she's comfortable near the baby gate, and then the next time move it a couple of inches. And sometimes you guys, that's what it is. It's a couple of inches. It's not very much, right? And over time it gets better. But the dog has to be relaxed in the moment that they're going to eat the food or be there. If the dog is already stressed and tense, it's not going to work because they're just going to be like, I'm going to eat the food real quick, and I'm going to get away from here. So you want to put it where it's like, if it's in, like, say, if it's in a room, you can put it in the middle of the room, and if she'll go have food and have a treat there or eat a Kong there, great. That's already progress, right? That's already progress. So you want to really be thoughtful about where you started. And that's what I said. Sometimes, like Joanne said, sometimes food can be bad too all the time. Because sometimes we're just like, come on, just take the cookie. Just because you're not yanking it doesn't mean it's not still stressful for the dogs. Because like you said, you're luring, come on, you could do it. How about this? You could do it. And it's like, no, I can't. The dog is really clear, I can't. And you're still making him do it. What about noises? What do you mean, like
With fear of noises, right?
Fear of noises, yeah.
I mean, again, going back to technology, we have so many things now that we never ever had. So it's like, I don't know. Let's say your dog's afraid of. Actually, Beth commented. She has a rescue dog, John's dog, that is a terribly afraid of squeaky toys. If she hears a squeaky toy, she's out. I mean, she'll bolt from the room. Kind of weird. I don't know why, but it's her thing, right? So what I did was I made a recording on my phone of just me squeaking a toy. Ma, 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 and I made it like 30 seconds, right? And I sent it to John, and I said, put this on the absolute lowest setting, like across the room, and just see if she has any reaction at all. And if she does not have a reaction at all, then just start feeding her some cookies or play it while she's eating, right? But that's the key. Did she have a reaction? Okay. Because if she did, and she wants to leave the room at the super lowest level, you can't use that, right? You're eliciting that fear that's not going to be a training response. So think of it this way too. If I ask Melanie to hold the snake, and then, hey, by the way, I want you to memorize this sentence, is she going to be able to do it? Right? Not.
Unless
Right? Right? Even if I said I'll give you $100, I'll give you $100 if you can repeat this sentence. I'm going to say it to you 3 times while you're holding that snake. Do you think she could do it? I don't know.
We have our answer. Treats with new people don't really work for it. Marcella says she doesn't need new friends. Well, the treats with new people, there's a certain way to do it. I'm telling you. There's a certain way to meet people. Taking treats from people isn't one of them. That's why we do the treat retreat. So the dog has that ability to make a decision whether to get close or not. And it works really, really, really well. So, and it's really not to, have her come and meet people, but to just be comfortable around them, because that's all you're really asking. Because you're right, some dogs don't need more people friends, or they don't really like people that much. And not that they dislike people, but they can take them or leave them, right? And if that's what she is, that's what she is. But usually I want my dogs to be as comfortable as possible around people. They don't have to love them, but I just want them to be really, really comfortable around them. So that we don't have any weird things. Yeah. So Tony, the other thing you can consider doing with Charlotte is playing with her near the gate, or doing a little bit of obedience or playing a game, doing a couple tricks and stuff, so that she gets, because play is a lot of dopamine and feel good things. So if you have those feelings around or near the baby gate, that might help as well. So that would help her kind of had a good experience around the gate, right? Like play, do some touch, do some sits and downs, and you're not asking her to interact with the gate. You're just hanging out by the gate and doing a couple things. Fun, easy, short, and then be done. Because the truth is, you don't want her to be that confident around the gate anyway, but you want her to be able to get closer to it. And it should be like against the wall, so it's not doing anything. And then eventually you would move it and things like that. But play, things like that. So.
Right. And the only other thing that I would tell you about that as well, you do everything in your power to secure that gate. Because I will tell you what, if your dog as a puppy had that much trouble with it and still won't go near it, if it falls again, forget it. Right? I mean, so you really have to secure something to make sure there's nothing bad that can happen with that.
She was doing a puzzle when I found it, so she really scared of it. Yeah. So yeah, I would definitely maybe play a game, something where you're interacting with her and you're there with her in a good way, fun, positive way. Because I usually try to do that with Jive. Jive occasionally will have issues with the floor. Usually with food, it's usually enough, but sometimes we'll play, come over here, and jump back and forth. And it seems to, the play part seems to enjoy. She seems to enjoy and kind of gets her past stuff. So.
Yeah. What is treat retreat? So Judy, that is is a concept that originated with Ian Dunbar, and Suzanne Clothier actually really kind of made it her own, which is the name Treat Retreat. So she has some videos out there on that. It's basically you start kind of with the space. The dog gets to set the space, and you keep and maintain that space. And as the dog gets more comfortable, they get to close it themselves. And it does use food. So it works super, super well with dogs who are kind of fearful of people.
Yeah. Dogs that are afraid of people, not wants to eat them.
Right. Yeah, don't do that. They'll close the space quickly.
Yes, they will. And it won't be fun for anyone.
Have yourself some insurance if you're going to try that.
Yeah. So, Mary, what do you think? Example, dog won't go down the stairs, put the food at the bottom of the stair. If she won't go down, take the food away till next meal. So eventually her hunger will overtake. I've not done this, but I heard it works. It depends. Sometimes it does. A lot of times it doesn't.
I don't know. I'm going to say I don't like that at all. And the reason why is, could you imagine if whatever you're scared of, I said, well, you better face your fear or you're not eating. right? How would that take its toll on your emotions as a human being? How would you feel if you did that to a kid, right? Well, you're afraid of the dark, right? You're not gonna get breakfast if you don't turn that light off, right? And you did that 3 days in a row to your kid. I mean, somebody called DPFS on you, right? There's a reason. I mean, that's not using food withholding. Yeah, you would, Mel, but withholding a basic need like food or water, all right, it, to me is only useful for like life or death things, or they use it to catch like stray animals because they're starving, or they use it for health and safety. They don't use it for things like, my dog's fearful of this area. So I am not a fan of withholding basic necessities to get a dog over a fear.
Yeah. And usually the way I've trained stairs for my dogs that won't go down the stairs, I start at the bottom stair.
Yep.
Pay that bottom stair, have her go up a couple stairs, come, because you're going up is easier. So if they go up, then you're going to turn her around with support, bring her down, put the treat on the step, and eventually the dog will learn how to. It's just like teaching the A-frame. They learn how to manipulate their body because that's what it is. They're not very coordinated. They learn how to manipulate their body on that piece of equipment because that's what the stairs are, on that object. So once they learn how to manipulate their body on it, they start to really quickly get more comfortable with it and be okay, or be comfortable with that particular thing. Yeah, Susan, treat retreat did work really great for Pearl. You'd never know. She's shy, but she's able to be around people. She's sassy around people. It's really good to see, yeah, because she was very, very worried about people. So treat retreat, if you have a dog that's worried about people, that's the thing.
Yeah, I remember meeting that dog back in the day when she was uber fearful, and now you would never even know it's the same dog. So
right.
Yeah, I know Dee Dee, wooden floors, like it's sort of the same thing as the baby gate we were talking about with Tony, right? I might play near it. I might see, can you eat a treat off the wooden floor while you still have your feet on the carpet? Can you put a toenail on the wooden floor and eat a cookie? Can you, right? And it's always, remember, the cookie's on the floor. So if the dog says no, then they say no. You could try again later.
Yeah. And then usually this is kind of how I did with, that's what I do with Jive. Like I stand between the linoleum floor and a carpet. So I toss the treat on the carpet, she goes and gets it. And I put a treat really close to the edge, so she goes and gets it. Good job. Then she goes, I send her away, take the pressure off on the carpet where she's comfortable. Then I put it in a little bit more. She might put a foot in to get it. Good girl. Then take it off, toss it again on the rug, bring it back again. And I did that only a couple of times, and over time I did it and it worked really well for Jive. So I made sure she was like, okay, can you go over there? Sure. Can come back. And then she went over there on her own and she checked. I stepped in and paid. And then just because Dee Dee, if you have a dog that's running into that space, that's a lot different. So you want them to make sure they have their footing and they're comfortable there.
Yeah, it's a good point. We don't want dog bowling on wooden floors.
That's right. Well, because some of the dogs, especially if they're like Jive, and I think that's why she got afraid of that floor, because she ran in there and skidded, and then she was like, "Oh my God!" Right? And then she was like, "Yeah, I don't want to go there anymore."
Yeah. Yeah, Sue, that's a really interesting comment. As a kid, man, that's kind of scary.
Yeah. So, but the thing is, and Sue, you bring up such a good point, right? Some of the stuff our parents did, they did the best they could, but sometimes you're like, wow, that's terrible. Right? Because you feel, yeah, because it's like the pressure to learn how to zip your, to do it. And back then, in all defense of the parents, of old school parents, which I had, they were doing the best they thought they knew how, which is the same with dogs, right? We think this is what we were taught a long time ago, and this is how we think is the best option. Conversely, it can work the other way too, right? Because we think, oh, they have feelings, they can't be under any stress, and that we see a ton of.
Mm-hmm.
We see people, I don't want them to be stressed. I don't want them to be upset. No, no, no. A little bit of stress is okay for all of us. That's how we learn and grow and get better. So not putting the dogs under any kind of stress or whatever. I am talking about severe cases of, fear and all that. But a little pressure, like, no, dude, you got to work through this, is one thing, versus, we're not going to feed you, but we're gonna try to do this. You're gonna try to work this through. So because we also see that too, right? Just like a 2-year-old can, the dog will be like, well, I can't do it, so could you help me out? I see. How many of us have seen that in nose work? I don't know how to work that problem. Oh yeah, you do, because you've done it before, and now all of a sudden it's a problem. So just wait them out. Put a little pressure is good for all of us, right? That's how we learn and grow. So dogs shouldn't be kept in a bubble either, where they never have to work for anything or they never have to do anything to be able to get their, like I am all about having them to earn their keep. You have to work for this, you have to do that. You're just not going to come in and, just because you're a dog and you have feelings doesn't mean that you can't, you can't actually, toe the line around here. So yeah, so Jill, so this is the thing. We just actually talked to somebody that was in a workshop I had this morning, and she's been working with her dog also gets stressed riding in a car. And for those of us who want to do dog sports, that's kind of a bummer because they have to ride in a car to go to the shows. So you have to work that problem out, right? So what the person that was working at, she ended up using a little bit of Xanax for the car ride, and that has made a huge difference for the dog. And she's in the process of trying to wean him off of it. She doesn't give him a lot; it was just enough for the car ride, and so she's in process of trying to wean him off. Sometimes that's what I mean. That's what you need. You can't just say, suck it up, buttercup, let's deal. Right?
Right. And, using some of the same thin slicing methods with the car, right? I always say, don't wait till you have to go somewhere where they have to go on a 20-minute car ride, right? Like sometimes just put them in the car. If they jump in by themselves, have them eat a couple cookies and go back in the house, right? Jump in the car, start the car, turn the car off, go back in the house, right? So see, like, when does the stress start to occur? Is it even like when you put your shoes on, or when you get the leash, or when you're
Right.
in the car, when you start the car, when you move the car? When does the stress really start? And that'll tell you. Maybe it's the engine, maybe it's the movement, maybe it's I don't have the right footing. Do I have a wire crate? Maybe a solid crate would help, like a berry kennel or something. So there's a lot of questions to ask your dog about that process, which, this whole, conversation goes back to the emotions of dogs, right? We like to make decisions for them a lot because they're ours, right? But if that was your best friend and she said, I don't like riding in the car, I don't like going on road trips, you're not going to be like, okay, we'll never go on a road trip together. You'd be like, well, why don't you like that trip? And it might be, I hate it when I have to pee and I have to go into a gas station. It's the grossest thing ever, and I don't like to pee when we're on the road, right? And you're like, interesting. Well, what if we made a road trip where we found like certain places that you would be comfortable, and they were like, okay, that would work, right? It was a simple fix. So sometimes you could just forego the whole road trip with your friend, as opposed to ask the question, find out what the problem really is, and fix that one single thing, and then it might make everything better. So it's good to ask the question of your dog.
Right. So that's why, Jill, if the composure didn't work, that means he needs more help. I'm going to tell you right now, if that composure didn't help him, then he needs more help than that. And Aaron, yeah, could you imagine being thrown into the deep end of the pool? I mean, my dad wanted to, my mom didn't let him, so I learned how to swim the old-fashioned way. But yeah, and that's what I mean. You think about what we do to our dogs. We put them in that situation where we're really putting them under so much stress and pressure, and it's like, and I have to say, if you really think about it, you don't feel good about that, right? When you put them in the situation that they shouldn't be in. So it's easier to not think about those things, and easier not to think about the dog's emotions about that. So yeah. So Jill, if he's having trouble with, if the composure didn't work, he needs a lot more help.
I don't know if she's saying the composure. I think she's trying to say jump in, jump out of the car, and he'll jump in, but he doesn't take food. I think.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Then, see if he'll eat a cookie by the car, right? Go back a step. Will you eat some food sitting outside the car, right? Can you do that? Can you eat, if that doesn't work, can you eat some food by the garage if you have one, or, on the end of the sidewalk near the car where you're not right next to it? I mean, just keep stepping back until you can find a place that he's comfortable.
Right. And that's tough. The car ride thing.
Yeah.
The person that I know that is working on it now, she's doing great. I mean, the dog's doing fantastic now, and he's able to go places, and he's able to do his job because she wants to compete with that dog. So it's really important for her to get past it. And the other thing, you guys, sometimes, and I hear this a lot. Well, I tried that. How long did you try it for? How many times did you do it? Because sometimes we quit just before we make progress, right? Yeah, Audrey, a lot of the car stuff is motion sickness. Yes, that's exactly what it is. But if you give them Dramamine, then they're stoned when they come home and get out of the car. So Xanax just alleviates the anxiety of the motion sickness, and then eventually they get better at it. They get more comfortable with it. So yeah, because the motion sickness is what makes dogs. Yeah. Yes,
Yep.
I've had somebody do that too. Electrical tape. So what happened with my dog, and I think Aaron alluded to it, Kaiser, when he was older, because his ears were starting to change, and his hearing was starting to change, and I think the rattling of the cages was distorted. He got stressed in the car, so the crates became a big thing. So yes, I know what you mean, Katie, about having to quiet everything down. But then eventually, ultimately, had to use a spray and to help him calm down because he used to get so upset in the car. My current don't have that problem, but
it's a whole other Facebook Live, guys. We'll try and set one up like that for you too. But not all humans are created the same. Some people struggle with emotions. They're either, have a lot of them and can't control them very well, or, so there is medication, right? But I know my opinion of it is I always want to try the least amount first, the least amount of training first. So if I can do it with a cookie and I'm making progress, I'm going to stick with a cookie. If the emotional response is over the top, my dog is panting and shaking and won't eat food, right? And I've tried a couple of things, and I've tried the sprays, and I've tried the calming collars, and I've tried the suntheanine and all of those things. Medication is not a bad thing, okay? If your dog is so stressed to the point where, they won't eat, they're just having a really hard time, medication can be helpful. Must be time. Someone's feeling hungry and emotional.
So here's the thing, guys, and how medication works, right? The reason we have to use medication at times is in order to get the behaviors you want so that the dog can relax and learn. Nobody can learn when they're terrified and scared and shaking and all that. They just don't.
Right.
They only learn when you're in a better place. So always remember that. If your dog isn't eating, there's no learning happening, right?
Right.
There's no learning happening. just the way it is, right? So make sure that you can help them get into a place where they can learn however you need to, right? Whether it's with treats and that works, or if it's with the whatever it's you want to deal with. And that's what when I have my behavior cases, we deal with the problem. Like, what is the root of the problem? Usually anxiety is the big one. So we deal with the anxiety, we take care of that, then we go from there. But if you're not taking care of the anxiety, you're not going to, you can't train when you have an anxious dog. And so, for example, I had a dog that came to me very, very stressed. She couldn't eat. It was just really, just the stress was just so much. So she wasn't learning anything. So why bother, right? Why just, let's deal with the stress part. Let's deal with the anxiety, and then we'll go for the rest.
Yep. And if you can deal with the root of the problem with help from medication, sometimes I don't want to say a lot. It depends on the problem. Sometimes you can wean them off of that medication once you've dealt with the root problem.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So it's not they don't have to be on it for life times.
Right. Not a forever. Right. In some cases, it's just enough to help, right? We put a little between the floor and the pen of the crates. It's done a lot. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Or we use the little rubber color things, Dave, on our crate pads. So so medication can help, or can be a tool, just like everything else. And remember, a training tool is just that. It's just to use while you're training, and then eventually you can wean them off. I've done this successfully for many, many dogs where they don't need meds anymore. They've been able to get through the problem, especially dogs that have been from rescue and stuff that have had some issues kind of happen to them. And then we get the people that want meds because the dog is too excited. It's like, no, the dog's just fine. It doesn't need meds. Just needs treatment.
I want that.
Exactly right. Yeah, the dog's just fine. It's all right, everyone. Heidi, yeah, we probably should try to do a series because it's there's so many different topics, but the goal with these last few topics about dog to dog is to really understand things from the dog's perspective, right? And being able to really accept that your dog is an emotional being and kind of deal with that and kind of change the way you look at them a little bit it's a good place to start, right? And then, because I think the rest of it gets a lot easier down the road. So,
yeah, because remember, if you can make life better for your dog, it'll end up better for you as well. So it's a whole relationship between the two of you, and the less stress there is, or the less impact of issues there are, it works out better for both of you.
Yep. All right, guys. I think that's all we have for tonight. Next week is Easter, so I'll put it out there, see if you guys are interested in joining us for Easter or not, so we can make some decisions on that. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. Emotions. Now it's going to be an earworm for you, Erin. All right, guys. Thank you all. Have a great week. We'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.